Today I have with me Janis Grummitt. Janis is a wiring warrior, but she's also a recovered insomniac. So she herself has had a lot of trouble with sleep issues over a number of years, done a lot of research on that, and is now here to share her wisdom about how to sleep well and to live wisely. So over to you, Janis.
Thanks, Liz. Well, learning to sleep better was all part of my journey to build a better brain. And I had, up until 2017, been focusing on a whole lot of things, including brain training, what I ate, socializing, all of those things that are regularly concerned with building a better brain. In 2017, I had a bit of a shock. I knew I wasn't sleeping well, and I was getting tired of being tired, but I didn't know how bad it was. And so I hadn't really focused on that. I'd been focusing on a lot of other things. And one morning, my husband said to me, "Do you know, I've noticed recently that you've been snoring." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." He said, "Yeah, but also I've noticed you stop breathing in your sleep." So that rang a bit of a bell, because I know that that could be a sign of sleep apnea. So I went and started a process that would change my life, really, move me from being an insomniac to being a good sleeper. So the upshot of that was I went in and had all the electrodes connected to my scalp and did an overnight sleep test. Turned out I had serious sleep apnea, had to spend 6 months on a machine to in order that I didn't have a problem, a serious problem. But in the process of that, started to research seriously about how to get good sleep. And I learned that there was far more to this than just wanting not to be tired every day. And the whys are on the screen now. So there are a huge number of reasons why we need to get better sleep. The first one is accidents. There's no doubt at all that the less sleep you get, the more likely you are to have accidents. Poor memory. A lot of people, as they get older, who think they're forgetting things, a lot of that is to do with not getting good enough sleep. Your immunity's lower. Into this couple of years of COVID, that has been particularly important. People haven't really talked about or understood the link between getting a good night's sleep and being okay, able to deal with infections like COVID. Overweight is a strange one. I learned that you're far more likely to have difficulties losing weight if you don't get sleep. There are chemical reasons for that. Most people don't get that. And dementia, it is positively correlated, particularly Alzheimer's, correlated with lack of sleep. And shorter lifespan certainly is correlated with less sleep. Now, there are some people, as always, like 1% or something, that are born genetically able to have less sleep. Are you one of the 1%? You'd take a big risk if you weren't, because it's very difficult to know without a full genome test whether you're one of those. If you're not, what I'm going to say today is really important for you to know. So in terms of the why, there are economic and personal consequences for not getting good sleep. So there's a good reason why all of those problems happen, and that's to do with what the brain does while it's asleep. So I know a lot of this, and it's fascinating. Firstly, your brain actually creates memories and consolidates memories while you're asleep. And if you don't get good sleep, you're not giving your brain the opportunity to digest what you've done in the day, but also that process of putting it into the right boxes, if you like, and creating long-term memory isn't happening either. That happens in sleep. Complex decisions require sleep. Some of you will appreciate you go to bed with a problem, you wake up in the morning and you've got the answer. That's because your brain works on problems during sleep. And if you ever need to make a really important decision, never make it without sleeping on it. And most people who are successful will say that to you for good reason. Sleep helps connect the dots for you. The next point about putting together creative ideas is the same sort of point. because during sleep, your brain's putting together new information with all the information that's already in your brain. And that's where, again, you might wake up in the morning with an aha, oh, I woke up this morning and suddenly had a creative idea about how we could do this or do that. And that's, again, because of that function while you're sleeping of your brain putting together, joining the dots, connecting. The other thing that happens while you're asleep is a bit more fundamental, and that is your brain starts to learn how to do automatic things. So it consolidates the things that you do regularly. So if you're learning to drive a car, it's in sleep that you will consolidate the recall about what you do in what order. When you put the key in, when you actually look in your mirror and look in, and so on. That is happening to you. And if you don't get sleep, there's a lot of evidence that it's very hard or almost impossible to set those automatic memories that give you that advantage during the day. The thing that really surprised me was certainly recent research is showing that your brain clears toxins and kills and removes old brain cells, autophagy, during sleep. And this is one of the fundamental discoveries in the last few years. Probably wasn't around in 2017, but since I've been on this topic, I've followed it through. Really, you look at things like Alzheimer's, and people are now speculating that buildup of plaques and tangles might be because the brain hasn't cleared all of the rubbish out. And I said in a previous video, if you're not clearing the rubbish out, then it's like never cleaning your house for 40, 50, 60 years. You're going to get clogged up and your brain just doesn't function well. The other thing that happens in sleep is the creation of new brain cells. If you don't get good sleep, your brain physically can't create new brain cells. It's one of the functions of sleep to help you to do that. And not that new brain cells are critical. It's more retaining the connections, which happens in sleep, but actually just the ability to create new brain cells is something that neurogenesis happens during sleep. So what's normal sleep? And you can see this little diagram here. Now, you've probably seen this before, but sleep is not sleep is not sleep. It's like people say, if I nap for 10 minutes, is that going to be as useful as a whole night's sleep? Well, no. If you look at this, what tends to happen typically during 8 hours sleep is you go down, 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 down through various stages of sleep to stage 4, which is deep sleep. And you have about three deep sleeps during an 8-hour stint, and it's about an hour and a half of different stages in each sector. So it's the deep sleep that seems to be really important. So if you're not getting at least an hour and a half in one go, it's unlikely you're getting good deep sleep. And if you notice on that diagram, there's a bit of a saying that says, an hour of sleep before midnight is worth 10 hours after midnight, or I can't remember the actual expression, but it's about getting sleep beforehand. And you can see that your first deep sleep is the deepest. The first sleep is the deepest. It certainly is. And then it gets shallower, then it gets shallower. So actually, there's something about early on that's really important. You don't want your sleep disrupted at the early stages. So REM sleep, which is dream sleep, is a higher level of sleep. It's not the same as deep sleep, and it's important to distinguish. You need both of those. And REM sleep is dream sleep, where your brain is sorting out all the emotional issues of the day and helping you to come to terms with things. The deep sleep is more about physiologically protecting and improving your brain and helping your brain to avoid things like dementia. So if you look at what you can do to get a better night's sleep. So I then had to, having come out of my sleep night with all my electrodes and having the bad news that your sleep is really not good at all, I had to research, well, how am I going to improve this? And sleeping tablets don't do it. Sleeping tablets are, we can talk about that another time, but sleeping tablets are a bit like going into an anesthetic. They will blot out your consciousness, but that's not the same as giving you all those levels of sleep. So there are three basic categories that I discovered in my quest for getting better sleep: physical, emotional, and cognitive. So those are three areas, and I'll just go through some really practical day-to-day things you can do to build better habits. And it really is habits. You know, it's no good saying, can I do one thing that will improve my sleep and do it now and get it over with? This is a long-term commitment to regularly, and it's better to do one or two things regularly and then move on to another few until you've developed the habit than try and do everything at once. So let's just have a look at the three different areas. So the physical area, just have a look first before we go through things at the caffeine curve on the right. Now, there are some physical things that we do that directly affect our sleep. I've just pulled out caffeine or coffee or dark chocolate or energy drinks, anything that has a lot of caffeine in it, in terms of how it affects your sleep. And you can see there that there is a point at which it becomes counterproductive because you feel tired, you get a hit of caffeine, it sends you up and you get that high, and then you come down, but you come down quite heavily, so it wakes you up. So this is a bit like alcohol. Alcohol will do the same thing. People will say alcohol helps me get to sleep. Yeah, it does. But then after a few hours, it wakes you up and you can't get back to sleep again. Caffeine's sort of the same. Caffeine will keep you awake, stop you from going to sleep in the first place. Some people can go to sleep, but it'll wake them up in the early hours. And that's why some of my friends have said, nah, I can drink tons of coffee and it has no effect on me. I went on holiday with somebody once who said that, and I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and there he was in the kitchen. You know, I heard him and got up there. No, that's not coffee. I just always get up at 4 in the morning. I said, yeah, well, I'll probably just try giving up the coffee. So first thing about this then is, the first thing is develop a routine. And a routine is a standard time to go to bed and a standard time to get up. That's hard for a lot of people. It's much easier when you're retired, much easier when you're a child, much easier when you're retired. If you work, try and get around that. One of the most difficult things is if you're on shift work, and we can talk about that another time. That is a really, really difficult thing to deal with. But if you're not on shift work, try and develop a routine. Now, if you do wake up in the early hours for some reason, also try and have a routine for 2 sleeps. Remember, it's an hour and a half that matters. So if you go to bed at 11 o'clock at night and you wake up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, that's okay. We come to the surface and go down regularly every hour and a half. Then as long as you've had a decent sleep, wake up, do a bit of pootling around, go back to sleep. In the Middle Ages, Chaucer talks about the time between 2 sleeps. We've lost this a bit in modern life. We assume you can go to bed and just sleep for 8 hours. Very few of us do. And there's a thought that we're all geared to 2 basic sleeps with a bit of a time in between. Later, I'll talk to you about some of the rules about getting up in the middle of the night, though. And there are rules like not switching bright lights on and stimulating your production of chemicals that will keep you awake. Boost melatonin. This is one of the things that helps you sleep. You can take melatonin tablets. They are not sleeping pills. I found melatonin quite useful, but they take time to start to work. So you may have been taking melatonin at the same time every night for a week before you even notice a slight difference. But that resets your melatonin in your brain. Your melatonin is the chemical that tells you it's time to sleep or to wake up. it's mainly affected by light. So you can reset your melatonin if it's been knocked out by exposing yourself to bright light in the morning, and in the evening when you want to go to sleep, lowering the light and lowering it about an hour or so before you go to bed, so that your brain gets the idea that it's going to be time to sleep, and your melatonin starts to kick in. Avoid stimulants, and we talked about coffee, alcohol, sugar. All of those do it to me. If I have sugar, even with my or fruit, which has a lot of sucrose in it, even for my evening meal, I'll be awake and can't get to sleep. So I've learned, and you need to learn, what it is that's correlated with your difficulty for sleep. I can't have coffee after midday. To give you an idea, I can't have alcohol late, so more than 4, and then I never have more than 1 glass of wine, otherwise it keeps me awake. And sugar or fruit, never after lunchtime. All right, so, but you will learn for yourself. Just try cutting it out and see if it has an effect. Cut it out for a few days, see how it goes. Some people are more tolerant to fruit, caffeine, alcohol. It's a sliding scale. Nobody is totally intolerant of that unless you're that 1% that can sleep whatever. The next thing is to avoid heavy meals before bed. And there's a good physical reason for that. I never really took much notice of this. I was gaily going out for dinner and eating at 8 o'clock at night. I mean, when in Europe, I brought up in the UK, and in England and in Europe, it's quite common to start eating at 9 o'clock at night. And it's hugely bad for your sleep. Unless you go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, you always need to leave 3 or 4 hours between eating and going to bed. And given that going to bed before midnight helps sleep anyway, then it's really difficult to keep that gap unless you eat reasonably early. So now I eat between 6 and 7 at night and leave a 3 to 4 hour gap. Again, that's hard for some people. And every now and then when we go out to dinner with people, I just have to give it up and think, right, I'm not going to have a particularly good night's sleep tonight, or I'll go to bed later and then deal with that later. So there's no perfection in this. You can't it's a routine that matters. It's a habit, but you're going to break it. It's like eating, you're going to break it at some stage in order to have a life, basically. The other thing is to get exercise during the day, and there's lots of evidence to suggest that the more active and the more exercise you get during the day, the more likely you are to get a good night's sleep. And the thing you've got to watch is that you don't do heavy exercise just before bed, because exercise actually stimulates you. So a lot of people make the mistake of going for a run before bed. Or the time to go for a run is in the morning or during the day. And then calm down by the evening. Maybe do a bit of yoga before you go to bed if that's your thing. But do get exercise during the day. And if you don't get exercise, you're just basically not physically tired enough to go to sleep, apart from anything else, apart from the chemicals you produce during the exercise. The final thing is quite important as you get older, and that is check your medications, because one of the things that I've learned over the last decade really is that there are certain medications that really interfere with all sorts of things, and sleep is a major. They don't tell you this. When a doctor puts you on a medication, they give you all the side effects. They don't stress to you, when you take this, it might keep you awake. And that is one of the most important side effects. You do not want to go on a drug that for the rest of your life stops your sleep. So it's going to be very important to say, is there an alternative drug that I can have? If this is a life-saving drug, you don't want to not take it, but ask your doctor, is the one that has less impact on my sleep? Or is there an alternative to this drug I can do that will do the same thing, but will actually not affect my sleep? So those are all the physical things, and they're fairly straightforward, and they're quite easy to get started on. The one that's really hard in my experience when doing coaching with people is about the emotional thing. And particularly, this has come to the fore during COVID, because people's levels of anxiety have been huge. And it's anxiety that keeps most of us awake at night. I am incredibly grateful that I sorted out my emotional issues with sleep before COVID came along, because I can honestly say I have not lost a night's sleep in the last 2 years from anxiety. I have it in the daytime, I switch it off at night. So it's incredibly important to build a habit of being able to deal with your emotional side. So stopping worrying about preventing negative feelings is really important. And there are lots of techniques you can use for that. There are really good videos, really good books, not least of which my book, which we'll talk about later, which covers this topic of how to stop yourself having negative feelings and going down that awful spiral when you go to bed. The one about 3 goods is one I often give people, which is a simple one. So when you're lying there in bed at night, make sure you start the night, your sleep, by thinking about and identifying 3 good things that have happened during the day. There are always, this is a bit of a hello, there are always 3 good things that you can identify that's happened. However bad things are, however bad you are not in Ukraine, however bad, there are 3 goods you can identify, even if they're relatively minor. You know, like I came through today without any mishaps. You know, whatever it is, identify those. And when you get up in the morning, remind yourself of 3 things you're eternally grateful for, you're particularly grateful for. And again, they can be, we all have things that we're grateful for. Grateful for having fresh water, grateful that the sun's shining, grateful, whatever it is for you, that you're grateful for your grandchildren, grateful for whatever matters to you. Now that presets your brain into positive, and it won't happen immediately, but over time, those things and a few other things you can do have been shown to be able to reframe your mind to be more positive and less negative. And this is a long-term thing. But I've had people say to me that just those 3 goods and 3 gratefuls have worked, like over 2 weeks, they've seen a big shift in just 2 weeks. So you have to be patient, but try it. And then there are a whole lot of other things you can do as well, some of which are in the book that I talked about earlier. Deal with anger or upset before you go to bed. So one of the rules I have is don't go into the news, don't go into Facebook, don't go into any of the things that are likely to rile you up before you go to bed, because as soon as your stress levels go up and you get angry, then you're going to take a long time to come down. So there's some basic rules about just not checking into even emails, because there's always a chance that an email might throw you off balance or be upsetting. So just some rules before you go to bed. All right, during the day, then you can come down, not an hour before bed. Avoid any potential emotional communications at all. So don't have a phone call with somebody or a WhatsApp video or a Zoom call with somebody where it's likely to upset you. Just do that earlier in the day. The final thing is learning to relax. Most of you will have heard about this, but it's very important. And there are a lot of things you can do going to bed in terms of full body relaxation practices. Personally, I, from an early stage, used something called HemiSync, and I can send you links to that. And that's where you put, it's a particular technique for integrating both sides of your brain, which you can use by just before you go to sleep, putting this sound into your ears. Some people aren't so keen on that, but I've been using it for years, and I can tell you it's not only safe, but it works. You know, I wake up and find I've got my earphones on and I have to take them off after an hour and a half, which is good, and then I go back to sleep. So meditating, using HemiSync, doing physical relaxation, all of those things are good for your emotional state. Cognitive is another one. Perhaps this is the one, apart from emotional, that I find affects people a lot. And the trouble is the cognitive one tends to marry in with the emotional one. So if you have a tendency to be emotionally negative or go down a negative spiral, if you're able to use logic, you're in deep trouble. So the people who struggle most are people who are highly intelligent and have a great sense of logic, and they're highly emotional, because then they go down the spiral even faster because they overthink. And so you go to bed and you think you've got one problem. By the time you finish it, because you're working out the logic is perfectly good. It's just that it's all negative logic. So you've really got to stop overthinking. And again, like the emotional thing, you've got to just do those relaxation things to stop your mind just going all over the place and just come down. Close open loops before you go to bed. Now, this open loops is something I heard about a couple of years ago, which is really, really useful. If you go to bed with things that haven't been concluded, then they're going to be on your mind. So what I do before bed now is write a list of everything I need to deal with that's on my mind. And then I put the list on one side, and in the morning I can pick it up. But at least my brain has downloaded those things, so it's not on my mind all the time and I'm trying to remember them. I've written them down. That works best for me. And I do a mind map, but some people just do a straight list, and that's fine too. Depends on your brain preference, which you do. Don't use a computer or a device immediately before bed, because that actually stimulates your cognitive functions as well as creating that light, blue light, which is not good for you. So even if you use a blue light filter, which now some people have an app for, the cognitive stimulation that gives you before bed is not good. You want things that are going to relax you, bring you down, and not cause you to be super active in your cognitive thinking. And again, organizing your day so that you don't rush. And the people who seem to struggle a lot with cognitive overactivity at night are people who've been try to fit far too much into their day and not planned it so that they're well organized. And if you're that type of person, the type A personality, we used to call that, then just have a look at how you're organizing your day. That might affect how you're getting your sleep. Watch what you eat. I mean, we've talked about that in a previous slide, and it's no doubt to me that the types of things you eat can overstimulate your thinking when you go to bed. And so, certain foods, and again, that's a big topic in itself, but think about what you're eating. Again, some of that in my book, some of that in virtually all the books on this topic. Now, the other thing you can do with your cognitive thing is treat the night as two sleeps. I have two sleeps, very often up at 1:30 in the morning, and I just go through some of the things if I've had anything on my mind and go back to sleep. Rules about that, which we'll come to in a moment, for getting up and enabling yourself to go straight back to sleep within an hour or so of doing that. Won't harm your sleep as long as you've got enough sleep either side. So what if you're still awake, or what if you do wake up in the middle of two sleeps? And this is going to happen to you, until you get your habits and routines sorted. You might not be able to get to sleep, and you think, I've been awake for 2 hours, I haven't been able to get to sleep. Or you've got to sleep, you're awake between two sleeps. So get up. Just don't lie there. If you lie in bed thinking, I'm not sleeping, your brain builds a habit and an association in your mind with bed, frustration, boredom, not being able to go to sleep. And then as soon as you see the bed, the first association you make with it is, oh my God, that's not a place I'm going to sleep well. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's actually better if you haven't got to sleep after the first 20 minutes, half an hour, get up, do something, then once you feel tired, go back to sleep. In fact, there is actually a treatment for people who can't get to sleep easily that's regularly done, which is to restrict sleep, which sounds unintuitive, but if you're having real problems getting to sleep in the first place, to actually stay awake as long as you can, and even if that's till 1 in the morning, by the time you get to bed, your brain will learn to sleep well, and then you can increase the amount of time. But that's for severe cases. So when you get up, here are the rules. keep the lights low. Keep the lights low. Never expose yourself to bright light, otherwise you'll affect your melatonin levels. Do something to take your mind off sleep. Don't do highly complex stuff. I will do Sudokus or something that's mind-numbingly boring, but actually quite good for just keeping your mind occupied. It stops your brain thinking about other things and worrying. Just do something. You can read a book, as long as you can read your book but don't read it on your iPad, because that will stimulate you with light unless you've got a blue filter. Do something that's reasonably monotonous. The other thing you can do if you do lose a bit of sleep is nap during the day, and napping during the day will actually not replace deep sleep, but it will actually give you a bit more physical energy, and it's quite good for you. Churchill used to get a minimum of 8 hours sleep a night, but he also used to nap during the day. So up to 30 minutes only. If you find you're going for a nap and you're not waking up for an hour, that will be worse than not doing it at all, because you'll start to go down those levels, and waking up before deep sleep, once you've gone down the levels, is disruptive for your brain. So keep your naps to under 30 minutes during the day, but napping is quite useful in addition to sleep or to help you. So remember, my thing is about trying to build wisdom as you get older and be as healthy as you can. Have a healthy brain as you get older. You can't develop wisdom without a healthy brain. One of the most important things I learned about being able to develop a healthy brain was to get good sleep. I didn't realize that for a long time. 2017 opened my eyes to it. It's not the only thing that you need to do, but my goodness, if it's a critical thing for you, please get onto it, because it'll help in all sorts of other ways that you're trying to build your healthy brain as you get older. Thanks.
Thanks, Janis. And now you've talked about your book on the way through. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your book and how people can get hold of it?
Okay, so it's on my website, but it's basically Sleep Well to Live Well. It's really easy to read, because I read a lot of books on sleep doing my research, as I read a lot of books on a lot of things, and to read the research, and I read research papers and so on. I talked to the top specialist at the Sleep Institute in New Zealand, and I tried to consolidate the simple, practical stuff into a paperback. So it's quick, easy to read. It's got diagrams and tables. I found a lot of the stuff that was out there was quite complicated. There are some good simple books out there by a couple of people, but not a lot, I found. Matthew Walker is fantastic, and he's got a good video, and he's also got a really good book on it. Michael Mosley has also done a simple book on it, but Michael Mosley's book I don't think is quite so good. At least half of the book is recipes his wife has come up with for meals that will aid sleep. So that's another area. If you think what you eat, I mean, it is important. That's what his whole book is more geared to. That Matthew is better for getting a wider thing. But if you want something that's simple and just, you can get this. Now, both of their books are available at the library. I understand my book's available at the library. The Central Library has certainly got copies of it, and my local libraries have asked me to supply them. So you should be able to ask for this, or if you get on my website or approach Liz's website, then we can post you a copy to wherever you are, and then just go through that. And I also do coaching on sleep if you're wanting some personal support on Zoom, so that you can get personalized. This is very personalized. There are some very generic rules, but everybody has specific sleep priorities. No different for me. It will be no different for you. Don't just adopt a whole basic raft of things because they're on the list. You need to start with the things that are most important for you.
So that book is called Sleep Well to Live Well, Tips from a Recovered Insomniac.
Yep.
So that could be available from your library. It's available on the Enrich Retirement website. We have a link to it, and also from Janis's website. And would you like to just remind people what is your website where they can purchase that from?
Website, wiringwarrior.com.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Janet, and I'm sure we'll hear some more from you again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Great. And sleep well.